Big shout out to Boxing Ego, and I wanted to address a question that came up in Boxing Ego's feed. So, Boxing Ego, if it's okay with you, I know you do you, but nonetheless, if it's okay with you, I just want to delve a little deeper into the question that was asked. The question was by one of your fans, ENVD. He said, "Why can't some boxers learn how to cut off the ring?" From a casual boxing fan like myself, I don't understand the complexity of it. It seems like a fundamental, not necessarily a master skill trait. And Boxing Eagle went on to talk about it being a mastery and you have to have schooling in that. But there's a couple things that Boxing Eagle didn't actually mention in that answer that I just want to talk about. Cutting off the ring is a mastery skill, and as Boxing Eagle correctly said, but there's something that you have to understand. To cut off the ring depends on the level of skill also of your opponent. See, he mentioned not Kovalov, but he mentioned Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin is able to cut off the ring against the opposition so far that he has faced. But certain boxers, because cutting off the ring is kind of like what you do in basketball, where you try to stay on one side of a basketball player to direct them in a certain direction. You don't want them to go a certain way. You block off that area that they have to go by, so they go the opposite way. But there's some basketball players who can still go where they want to go by feinting you one way and then going the opposite way. And it's the same thing in boxing. There are certain boxers who have knowledge on how to prevent a boxer from cutting off the ring on them. There's a certain defensive moves you can make which are almost 100% guaranteed to have the guy who is trying to cut you off actually start to follow you, because he can't predict which direction you're going to go. And even though he's blocking a certain direction where you would go, you still end up going there because of the feints and also the movements, the bobbing, the weaving, the rolling that occurs, which the boxers just can't handle. So there's a lot of things involved when you're dealing with someone where you are trying to cut off the ring, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to cut off the ring. And what's more important is if your opponent is that skilled and mobile, it's better to wait for your opponent to come to you than to try to go to them. And that's what some boxers don't understand. You have to mix it up. You have to sometimes let the opponent come to you, and then other times you try to cut off the ring on them. But the basic, remember I was talking about two things. When I compared Floyd Mayweather to Erislandy Lara, Erislandy Lara is he's a stick and move fighter, right? But Floyd Mayweather is not just a stick and move fighter. Floyd Mayweather, he can come to you, he can do the typical stick and move around the ring, or he can slip and slide into you, he can roll into you, he can roll under you into the side of you, he can pivot around you. There's many different things Floyd can do, and with that kind of ability, he can walk you down as well. He can walk to you and walk you down. There are many different things Floyd can do. And with a boxer like Andre Ward, it's the same kind of thing. They can come to you and they can make you feel their physical power and their strength on the inside. They can outmaneuver you at mid-range. They can outbox you and actually be doing the stick and move, or they can decide to do pivots around you, or some unusual pivots that are not stick and move. They're not your classical kind of movement that you expect. They can lead off of either hand. They can feint off of either hand, and then there's the whole system of feints that they have. So it's easy to talk about cutting off the ring to maybe an elementary classical outboxer, but it's not necessarily the same especially when a boxer can manipulate range and fight at different ranges. It's a very, very difficult proposition. You saw Manny Pacquiao try to cut off Floyd, and Roy Jones Jr. was criticizing him for what Floyd was repeatedly doing to Manny Pacquiao. But it wasn't that. It was that Floyd manipulated the range so much. He would hook Manny Pacquiao from a distance using his range. Then at certain times when Manny Pacquiao's in mid-range, he would bob and weave, and he would roll punches, and then he would counter. See, it's a problem when the guy who you're trying to stalk, he's also countering you. He's making you pay every time you make a mistake. Every time you get into range, you cut him off from one end, he makes you pay. He doesn't just try to all out fight you, he's using his defense, but then you don't know when he's going to counter you. So it's not as easy as it sounds to cut off the ring. It's not about just cutting off the ring either. What do you do when you cut off the ring? You may cut off the ring. You may get the opponent in the corner, but then that opponent is able to beat you to the punch, or he's able to use range on you, and therefore use that to his advantage, or he's able to set a trap for you. So it's not just about cutting off the ring. And opponents like Ward and Mayweather, they allow you to corner them so that you would actually produce offense so that they can counter you. So a lot of times there are traps being set. So it's not enough to just cut off a ring. And not only that, it's not enough to think that just because you can cut off the ring on certain opponents, that you can do it for every opponent. And so the science of cutting off the ring goes beyond just cutting off the ring. It goes to what are the times when you allow your opponent to come to you? What are the times when you go to your opponent? What are the times when it's better to keep the fight in the center of the ring instead of chasing down your opponent? Canelo Alvarez, he's pretty smart. When he realized he couldn't chase down Miguel Cotto, he took the fight to the center of the ring. And that's where he got his advantage, bringing Cotto to him. So for people who talk about cutting off the ring, and there's a lot of emphasis on cutting off the ring, why didn't Sergey cut off the ring on Andre Ward? Well, that's because Andre Ward set a trap for Sergey. And when Sergey was trying to get at Andre Ward was pivoting in a circular way. He was pivoting in a very strong arc. The same thing that happened with Floyd Mayweather versus Andre Berto. If you were to watch that fight again, Floyd pivots at an angle as he's moving backward. You never move straight back, right? If you move straight back, then your opponent can cut you off, and if you try to just move one direction, they can cut you off. But it's a difference when you're pivoting on either leg. Now the opponent doesn't know which way you're going, and then when they can't predict now and try and force you one direction or another, because you have the range, you have the distance on them. That's how Andre Ward was able to pivot out the way, and they were saying, well, why didn't Sergey cut off the ring there? Well, Andre was just now on the inside of Sergey, all right, landing body punches, and then he got out of range. Sergey tagged him a little bit with a jab, and then Andre wasn't going straight back, he was pivoting. And because he didn't go straight back and he was pivoting at a sharp angle, Sergey always was missing him. He was just missing him. Because these guys manipulate range. So it's not as easy as people think. Golovkin may look great against the opposition he's so far faced, but against an opposition that knows how to manipulate range and knows all the stuff that I just spoke about with Mayweather and Ward, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to cut off the ring. In fact, he's going to miss like crazy, and he's going to look silly, right? So I just wanted to elaborate on that in some detail, that cutting off the ring has to do a lot with the opposition you have to face and the tools they have, because there's some guys you just can't cut them off. It's better if you just let them come to you than you waste your time trying to cut off the ring on them. You saw Canelo versus Erislandy Lara, and Erislandy Lara, even though he's a standard, typical stick and move fighter, advanced but still standard, classical stick and move fighter, he's very complicated in that he can attack you when you think you have him, because he's constantly manipulating range. And of course, Erislandy Lara is an out boxer. He's not an in boxer, right? He's not an inside boxer. He's not a mid-range boxer. He's an out boxer, and a classical out boxer at that. But because of his southpaw stance, and also because of his advanced skills in using different techniques to fight, it made a very difficult fight for Canelo Alvarez, especially as he's very mobile. And the other thing is, when you try to invite a fighter in Now he has the options and when he wants to attack you, how he wants to attack you, and you give a fighter like that enough time to think about it. You know, even Marcos Maidana versus Floyd Mayweather and Jose Luis Castillo against Floyd Mayweather, the younger Floyd Mayweather, even those two guys couldn't really cut off the ring on Floyd Mayweather. But what they did was they got enough range to land a punch or two, and they always tried to go to the body first. And once you can try and slow down your fighter that way, then you can get more chances to have them slow down and fight you in the center of the ring. So cutting off the ring is not necessarily what you might strive for with a fighter. Sometimes it's just to tag him, just to touch him, arm, elbow, it doesn't matter, just to touch them, because it's hard to get range on these guys. And especially if the fighter is able to change range on you and change timing and change position on you, you know, you have to just be trying to just tap them, trying to touch them, trying to find out where this range is. What range are they acting at? In the meantime, you may be receiving a lot of punishment, but that's what you have to do. And you have to hope and pray for the best and just keep on being relentless and try to crowd them, smother them. You may smother your work in the process, but it's very, very difficult to fight those kinds of fighters. All right. So to address ENVD's question in a little bit more detail, it depends also on the opponent you're facing, and that will determine if it makes sense to actually be the aggressor in that fight, or if you should lay back and be more of a thinker. Don't think too much, but try to set traps yourself for those kinds of guys. Sergey Kovalev did not knock down Andre Ward on the ropes. He knocked him down in the center of the ring. He set him up. He got Andre Ward to come to him, and he set him up. It was only once, but he managed to do that. Marcos Maidana was the same thing. He let Floyd come to him with a pull counter, and he set him up with that counter right. So you have to, it doesn't always make sense to put pressure on a fighter. If you're a pressure fighter, sometimes you have to mix it up. You have to let the fighter come to you. You got to let the fighter have some confidence and let them fire off shots, because every time a fighter fires off a shot, he opens up a space for you to counter him with. And so the guy who's facing Adrian Ward, who's facing Adrian, what's his name? The super lightweight kid, Adrian. I forgot his name. He's the 5-time world champion. He was the guy that loved to be like Floyd Mayweather. I forgot what his Adrian Broner. There you go. I think the guy's name is Adrian. What is it? Gonzalez. Adrian something. He's facing Adrian Broner. That kid, go watch him. He does smart pressure. He's very active, but he also uses smart pressure. He can fight on the inside. He can also fight on the outside. Watch that kid. He fights you, but he also lets you come to him. I think he's the kid that knocked out, I forgot the other kid's name, who was an uprising star, and everyone was shocked. Adrian Granados. Check out that kid. He's going to be fighting Adrian Broner. Watch how Adrian Granados handles Adrian Broner. I think they're supposed to fight soon. So go check out that fight, because Granados is a special kind of fighter. He'd been robbed a couple times, or he didn't get the decision to go his way. So check out that kid, because he's got a lot of different things he does when he's fighting. I think he's Buddy McGurk's boy, I think. So look out for him. He's definitely going to be one of those future stars. Watch out for that kid. You have to be an intelligent pressure fighter. You can't just be a pressure fighter. If your pressure fighting doesn't work, you got to change up your game and do something different. That's the difference between Mayweather, Ward, and everybody else. Mayweather can become a pressure fighter if he needs to be. Ward can be a pressure fighter if he needs to be. Mayweather can be an outboxer and let you catch him if he needs to be. Andrew Ward can be the same. They can change it up on you. And that's important. When you're fighting a fight, you have to be able to change up. You can't just be fighting on the front foot all the time. And a lot of fighters, they only know how to fight on the front foot. They don't know how to fight on the back foot. You have to be able to do both. And Mayweather, Ward, they can do that. They can fight on the back foot if it's necessary, front foot if it's necessary. You see it in an actual fight. You see them come on the front foot and they start to attack. Then you see them on the back foot. Sometimes you see them on the inside. Sometimes you see them on the outside, depending on what kind of fight. They may fight from range, or they may fight within range. It's up to them. So with that kind of versatility, it's very hard to beat guys like that. So think about what I just said, and I hope that pressure fighters will be a little bit more intelligent. Again, the guy with the blueprint in terms of pressure fighting that I've seen who's really effective is Adrian Granados. Go check that kid out. You guys have a great one.